Hi, good people. My name is Mr. Estwalo. I'm the founder of the Shabbat Foundation Resource Center. Today, we want to revise one of the simplest topics in European history, the Directory. The Directory was there in France from 1795 to 1799. So, we are going to revise this question. The question reads, the Directory brought stability to France between 1795 and 1799. Discuss. Are we together? I'll read the question for the last time. The Directory brought stability to France between 1795 and 1799. Discuss. So guys, remember, when you're given a question, you have to read and understand the question and you underline the keywords. So in this question, our keyword is stability. So what are the question demands? The question demands is to analyze or to assess the works of the Directory. But remember, to answer the question and you have to agree to the question, the keyword there is stability. So basically, we are going to look at the stability side of the Directory. So guys, let me start on it. I believe personally that the Directory managed to bring stability in France. Why? Because one of their key aim in France was to maintain peace. Why am I saying so? Remember, the Directory, it managed to deal with all internal revolts. You give examples of the Bebefo. They managed to deal with the Bebefo plot. Remember, the Bebefo plot was one of the serious internal problems. They also managed to deal with the Vendemia uprising. So they managed to deal with all internal threats, hence creating stability and peace in France. Another thing, the Constitution of 1795, it also brought stability. Why? Because it adhered to the revolutionary principles. There was separation of powers. There was the executive authority, whereby there were 5 people that were going to rule the country. By doing that, they wanted to limit the powers of the directors, so hence bringing stability. And another thing, they wanted to avoid a situation whereby there was one-man dominance. We give an example of Robespierre. During the convention, he wanted to dominate the state affairs alone. But during the Directory, there were 5 people that were going to rule the country. And there were also 2 chambers, the Council of 250 and the Council of 500. So by this constitution, I believe that the Directory wanted to maintain stability. Why? Because the constitution was progressive, and at the same time, the constitution was moderate. And another thing, the Directory also came up with economic reforms. They also came up with economic reforms. For example, they appointed one of the competent ministers, Ramel, and we know that Ramel is one of the ministers who balanced the budget of France for the very first time, and he also revised the taxation issue in France. So we see that there is some effort that was done by the Directory. For instance, they also introduced a new paper money, which was known as mandate, but unfortunately the money was worthless. But there is an effort. Why? Because they appointed Ramel, and Ramel, he managed to balance the budget for the very first time, and he also made a rigid economy where there was no borrowing. So go and read about the reforms of Ramel, because it was an effort to create stability. Another thing, the stability was ensured in France during the Directory through successful foreign policy. Even though the Directory actually depended on Napoleon Bonaparte, they relied on Napoleon Bonaparte and the army, but the Directory was successful in foreign affairs. Why am I saying so? Because through this successful foreign policy, they managed to dispossess all the enemies, and they also managed to create peace with other European countries through the Treaty of Campo Formia, which was signed between France and Austria. So we can see that the Directory, to a certain extent, it created stability in France. However, I believe that stability proved to be difficult during the time of the Directory. Why am I saying so? Number one, the Directory, it survived so many coups. During the time of the Directory, there were coup d'etats. So it's a sign that this government, it survived so many coups. For example, the coup d'etat of Florel and the coup d'etat of Fratido. And another thing, this government was weak. Why? Because it relied on the army for all the plots. There were so many uprisings during the Directory, top of the Vendemia uprising, whereby the Parisians were revolting against economic hardships. So it's a sign that there was economical instability during the Directory. We talk of the Bebefo plot. It was also another serious internal threat, whereby Bebefo was against the Directory, where you say that there was no equality. during this government. Actually, he said this government was the government of the middle class because of narrow franchise. So we see that there were plots against this government. People wanted to overthrow the directory. So it's a sign that this government was incapable to solve the problems that were facing revolutionary France. The state was fragile because of the directory. So you can say there was instability in terms of economy because there was unemployment, there was inflation. There was a lot that was happening that was paid during the directory. So in order for you to answer this question, make sure that you address the stability side and however you address the instability side. Thank you so much, Mr. Estrada. Be blessed.